Today I'm going to make my ginger chai spiced cookies. These are a holiday must in my home. I developed this recipe about 9 years ago, just after we came back from a trip to India, and I was thinking about making holiday cookies and I wanted to infuse the flavors of India, and so this ginger chai spiced cookie came about, and I adore this recipe and I make it all the time. The original recipe has a 1/4 cup of jaggery, and I'm just using brown sugar today. You can definitely use the jaggery if you like as well, but it's just a lot easier to not have to grate the jaggery, so I can make a bunch of batches quickly. So when I'm doing that, I just use the brown sugar. Okay, so let's get started. Starting with the dry ingredients. So I'm just going to grab a bowl and a whisk. So I have my flour. Just using all-purpose flour here. I have some chai masala. This is my homemade chai masala, but you can use whatever you like. The recipe for this is on my blog. I'm using some dried ground ginger, a little bit of salt, some baking powder, and some baking soda as well. Just give that a good mix. Set that aside. Now that we have the dry mix, let's make the wet mix. So starting with some butter, add the brown sugar, and beat that for a few seconds until well mixed. So this is well combined now. I'm gonna add the milk and the egg. So this is the egg of our beautiful backyard chicken. We have 4, and this is a lizard grip egg. That's the name that our son gave to our chicken. I'm just gonna put it into this milk bowl to make sure that it is a good egg. And then transfer it into the mixer and mix again until combined. Now I'm going to add the vanilla and the ginger. The double ginger really makes a difference in the flavor. I really love using both dried and fresh ginger in this recipe. Perfect. Now add the flour. Add it in 2 batches, so add about half of the flour. Mix. Add the remaining flour. Mix again. Just scrape that down. It already smells so good. Okay, just gonna take this out. Scrape out all the dough. Okay. I have a little sheet of plastic wrap. I'm just going to grab about half of the dough here. Use my hands to gather it all together here. Then I'm just going to shape it into a puck and wrap it up and refrigerate for an hour or more. Okay, and repeat. So I have my 2 pucks. I'm just going to refrigerate these for an hour or up to a couple of days. The cookie dough has rested in the refrigerator overnight. Time to make the cookies. So I'm just gonna unwrap the plastic wrap. And I like to use powdered sugar to roll out the dough, and this makes sure that the flavor of your cookie is intact and you're not adding raw flour that doesn't have so much flavor to the end of your cookie dough. And it's a bit hard from having been in the refrigerator overnight, but it'll soften as it warms up. You can roll these to as thick or thin as you like. Typically, I like to do just a little bit under 1/4 inch. These cookies are very similar to a sugar cookie, but they do have a little bit more baking soda in them so that they get a little bit fluffier and have a nicer chew. And they also will expand a tiny bit, but not so much that they won't hold shape from a cookie cutter. They'll just expand just a little tiny bit. Okay, this looks good. And I have a parchment lined baking tray. And I just like to make these in circles so that I can decorate them how I like. So I have a circle cookie cutter and just going to press those out and lay them on my cookie sheet. Make sure there's a little bit of space between each cookie, about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of space between each cookie to make sure that they don't stick to each other while they expand during baking. And then once you have all the cookies cut out, roll up the rest of the dough into a ball, and then you can roll it out again and repeat the process. Just gonna go ahead and bake this at 375 degrees for somewhere between 8 to 12 minutes. It depends entirely on how big the cookie cutter is and how thick your cookies are and how crunchy you want them. Okay, those look great. So I'm going to transfer them over to a cooling rack. Just gently pick them up with a spatula and let these cool completely before frosting them, or you can just eat them on their own. The cookies have cooled, so now I'm going to work on the frosting. So I'm just going to use a really basic royal icing recipe, and I'm going to show you my ratios and how I like to color them. I have 3 bowls here. I'm going to make 3 different colors of frosting. I'm going to make a plain white, and I'm going to make the most of that. And then I'm also going to make a green and a pink. So the way I do that is I have some powdered sugar here, and my ratio is for every 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, I use 1 tablespoon of meringue powder. So I'm going to make 1.5 cups of the white. So here we go. I have a 1/2 cup measure, so 1.5 cups here. And I'm going to do 3/4 cup for each of the colored ones. And I'm going to do 1/2 cup. And then I'm just going to eyeball the rest. For the 1/4, I'm just going to do about a 1/2. Okay, and then with that, I'm going to do 1 tablespoon of meringue powder. So I have just meringue powder, Wilton brand meringue powder that I am going to use here. So 1 tablespoon for the white, and I'm going to do 1/2 tablespoon for each of the others. So I have white, pink, and green. So for the green, I'm going to use matcha powder, which is just from Trader Joe's, and I am going to use a whole packet. Gives you a beautiful, beautiful pastel green. For the pink, I have some grated beet here. I just grated up about a tablespoon of beet. You can also use a boiled beet or a cooked beet. I've used some of those packaged beets that come pre-cooked. And I have a bowl here, and I'm just going to combine my beet with a little bit of water and give that a good mix. And then I'm going to strain that liquid into another bowl to get my beet juice red water. And I'm going to actually add a little bit more water to the beet. I'm looking for about 2 tablespoons of water total so that I have enough to thin out my powdered sugar as well. Just going to press that through. Perfect. I'm going to go get this out of the way so I don't stain my clothes, and I'll be right back. So I have 3 forks. I like to just use forks for making my powdered sugar. I'm going to put one in each of them and just mix the meringue and the powdered sugar really well. So now to make the frosting, I'm going to start with the white one. So I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons of liquid and then see how much I need. And for this one, I'm going to start with just 1 tablespoon. That's pretty thick. So I'm going to add about a half more tablespoon. Because I want to pipe this in a henna design, I have to make sure that it doesn't get too runny. If it gets too runny, I will not be able to hold shape when I do the designs. So I want to just be really, really careful with how much water I add. But it's okay if I add too much, not a big deal, because I can always add more powdered sugar. So a little bit more. Like I've added 3 tablespoons so far, and that looks pretty good. So I'm going to leave it at this for now. And do the same thing with the green. I've already added the 1 tablespoon of water. So I'm just going to mix that in and add a little more water as I need it. So the green has a pretty strong flavor of matcha. So if you like matcha, it's fantastic. I have decided that I love it lately. I didn't used to like matcha very much, but I've been drinking a lot of green tea lately, and my tastes have changed. So I'm really enjoying the flavor of matcha. The kiddo, not so much. So he only likes the green frosting in small doses. He doesn't like it when I coat the full cookie in green. Okay, and now for the beet. I like to do this last because I don't want any beet color getting on my tablespoon and then muddying up the colors for the other 2. Look at that beautiful pink. I love this color. Now I have my frosting. It's nice and thick, and it's going to be pipeable. So I have 1 piping bag. I only have 1 reusable piping bag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the reusable pastry bag for the white frosting. I have attached a number 1 metal tip to it, but really you could do whatever you like. I'll use a glass, and I will wrap the bag around it so I can pour the frosting in. If you wanted a thinner frosting and you don't want to pipe a design onto it, you can add a little bit more water, about a tablespoon more water to the frosting, and you can just dip the cookies into the frosting, which is a really fun thing to do. And that's how we do it for home when my son is decorating his cookies. So just pour the frosting in. And if it turns out that this is not the right consistency and this is not comfortable for you, you can always put it back in the bowl and adjust the consistency and then pour it back into the piping bag. Just that there. And then I'm just gonna wrap the edge, and then I'm gonna put it on the counter and hold it. For the other 2, since I don't have another piping bag, I'm gonna use a Ziploc bag. So I'm just gonna put that in there and do the same thing. And here it's really important to make sure there's no air left in the bag. So I'm just gonna try to squeeze as much of the air out as I can and then seal the bag. Okay. And repeat for the matcha frosting as well. Starting with the white frosting, I'm going to attempt to do a white design. Okay, just gonna put that on there and let's see what I can do. It's been many years since I've done an intricate henna pattern. So I hold the back end closed and I squeeze gently from the front, and this gives me pretty even pressure, and I control that pressure by how much I close it up at the back. I've done some white ones. Now I'm going to switch to the colored and show you how I use these plastic bags. So I'm going to start with the pink, and what I do is just kind of gather all of the frosting as much as I can into one corner and push down like that into the one corner. Take my scissors and cut the tiniest tip off. I want it to be very barely gone. And I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the frosting bag. So the difference between using the piping bag and just the Ziploc bag is that I don't have as much control over the design. But it's actually a lot easier because my fingers don't hurt as much. So you can do whatever your preference is. They both work pretty well.